everybody, it's Kate Quinn from Fabricated Quilts, and at this point, if you could go ahead and let us know, can you hear us okay? How does the camera look? We shouldn't have any flickering. You should have a good sound, and we're going to start sewing in this area, so you should be able to see the machine and the needle just as we get started. So we'll give it a minute to let people go ahead and log into the broadcast, and hopefully give me some feedback so we know if we're doing well. All right. And I have to say, Honey is helping me out today. He is here with me. So I find that with the long arm stuff, it's a little bit challenging to manipulate the camera because of the way that the machine moves. And so he's been very gracious in helping me out. Okay, so let me grab a few things and we'll start the conversation. So I'm going to put up my card right now so you can see things really well. So I think some people are familiar with these tools right now. You've seen those before. This is the Circles on Quilts that we use for sit-down machines. Okay, and maybe we can just go ahead and we'll come in a little bit just so you can see them a little bit more. We'll scoot down just a little bit. Okay, the way that these work is when we're sewing, we're keeping the foot in the channel and we're moving the sandwich right, left, along the channel, right? So what happens when we're doing this, I can't move my quilt on a long arm. The quilt is completely staying in the same place. The only thing that I can move is my machine. So we need a different tool. This type of tool does not work on a frame. Now, the designs that we're going to show you, you can do with these on your sit down. Just keep that in mind. But if you're a long armer, and today is our long arm Sunday, so I'm going to scoot these tools out of the way, and I'm going to show you the tool that we're going to be using instead. So this right now is our Longarm Circles on Quilts, and this is designed for users on a frame. So the foot itself will be hooked into that channel right there. Now let me pull this up close a little bit. I want to see if you can see some of the numbers on there. Okay. So notice that I don't, it's upside down? Oh, the side. Yeah, so right here, look on this side, right here. We'll look at this side first. So these are by half. So you'll have, 1 and a half, 2, 2.5, 3, 3.5, 4, all on this side. These are pinholes where you're going to set your pin, set the template right on the pin. Okay, and what you would get on this side is you would get 1/4 and 3/4 increments on this side. So for today, we may use that just to show you what it looks like, but pretty much we're going to use the odds and evens just like we would if we had the circles on quilts. And so we got to kind of keep track of what number that we're on as we're going. So right now, I've already got my pin centered right there. So we'll try to bring it in just a little bit more so you can see a little better here. Let's see. Oh, I bumped the camera. Can you tell? So let me come in just a little tighter. And all this is right here is just a little piece of an eraser. If my ruler base, which is right there, okay, you can see the edge of it. If it wasn't there, that pin would just fall out. So right now, the ruler base is going to hold the pin, and I'm just going to take my little eraser off of there. And that makes sure that the pin doesn't fall out, it's not on the ground, I can find it, it's not going to be lost whenever I'm switching if I'm not right in the same line with where the table is. Okay, so let's go ahead and start, and we'll just pick a number. We'll just start here at 4 something. Let's see, number 4. Now, let's talk about what does it mean, number 4. That means the circle size is 4 inches, right? So this is where the foot is going to start. This is the center position. So it's 2 inches on this side, and it would be 2 inches on the opposite side. So always think about that with this tool. That pin is the center position of a circle diameter. So for example, if I was only going to sew half of a circle, then I'm only going to get 2 inches of height from this pin, if I'm using this particular template this way. Okay, I do like to put the little pin holder right on there. We also have the plastic ones that come with the long arms, and those are the little circle ones. They look like this. Let's see if we can, yeah, put it a little further away. Right, they're little circle discs. Okay, so right there you'll see that that's just going to be set on top of the pin. Okay, so that's going to take a picture, not focus. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and we'll get started. Right here, I'm just going to pull this up. Notice that when I'm holding all of this, I cannot just let this do whatever it wants. I have to compress this where the foot is. I cannot have this wiggly wobbling around when I'm trying to sew this, right? So let's go ahead and we'll pick up the thread right away. Scoot this out of here so we can get this thread up. There's our bobbin, and we'll just anchor that right where we want to. We'll get the needle in place, and then we'll start stitching. So just put that right in there. I usually leave those tails. I'm going to come back around in the circle, and I'll just stitch them closed when we come around. Now, with this tool, I can go that way. What this means, if I'm going this way to my left on that way, I am going to be pushing the machine with my hand, keeping it right in that channel, and I'm allowing this to pivot around. If my hand gets in kind of a weird place, then I'm just going to shift my hand and keep rotating around. It's kind of important that you stay in control. We're not trying to go ridiculously fast. We're trying to create a pretty circle. So what I don't want to do is pull my long arm a little bit. You know, if my hand is on the handle of my machine and I'm pulling away, this fabric can flex. I don't want that. I want to just allow this spacing to stay where it is. So let the machine just stay in the channel and keep control of the ruler, and then just gently guide it around. We're not trying to put any big pulls on anything or torque anything. If I do need to adjust my hand, I'm going to stop, and then I will just start the machine once I'm back to where I need to and comfortable again. So no pushing and pulling, nothing crazy. And then I'll just, as I get right here to the end, let's see if these are in my way, I think. And then I'll just put those tacking stitches. I want to try to get right where I left off. So tack it in, and then I'll just scoop this out. We'll just take this off. We have our ruler base under there for the moment, and there's my circle right there. So let's just come in a little bit more, give you a chance to see it a little tighter. Okay? So what we can do with this type of design without moving the pin is I can just change it, and I can right away do another circle. This particular tool is great for any kind of concentric circle work. So I think we said we were on 2 inches, so let's just go up to 5. And I'll cut those threads real quick so they won't be in our way, those inner ones right here, since we already tacked these guys off. And I don't need to cut that other thread at this moment. All I need to do is just shift up, and I can cut all of those threads later. So now I'm in that 5-inch channel position, and that is a different spacing. And this time, let's just go the other way. Here, if I'm going towards my right position in this direction, let me fix the camera, guys. Hang on just a second. We need a little more space coming out. So as I'm going in this direction right here, I can actually use the ruler and push the machine. So there's quite a few different hand positions right here. There's a little, like a thumb position right here. As long as I'm keeping that ruler against that ruler base, I can actually push the machine out in front of me. And then as I need to change my hand position, I'll just keep doing that. Just go nice and easy. I do like to keep the edge of the foot riding against the template. I feel like that gives a little bit of a smoother design if I can keep that right in place. Rather than letting it kind of wiggle in the channel, I want a little bit more control. So I'm just letting it pivot right around that pin, keeping it as close in that channel as I can. You'll notice that we do have to change our hand position. We can't turn our hand 360, so we can't easily do that. So as I'm coming in on this side, might be a little bit more visibility as I'm coming this way, because this part of the channel is open, so I can see as I'm coming into that other circle. Always with the long arm, whatever is the best, easiest way for you to complete your design, that's really what you want to do. You know, if one hand works better, if this direction works better, that's what you need to do. So I'm going to pause for just a minute and check with Honey, see if we have some questions. Okay, so if we have the sit-down circles on quilts, we can do the same thing. We can put our pin in the center and we can just change channels and we can sew as many circles as we want to. Now, we had said that these tools are similar. So let me just pull one of my circles on quilts up. The Circles on Quilts template set number 3 has 4 different pieces in it. So I'll just put it up there. It has one fan that's even numbers only, one fan that's odd numbers only, one fan that's even by half, so like 2.5, 4.5, 6.5, 8.5. And then the fourth one is the odd numbers by half. So that would be 3.5, 5.5, all the way up to 11.5. So each of these fans would be needed in order to shift the spacing at 1/4 inch concentric circles. That would mean that the distance from one circle to the next could be spaced at a minimum spacing of 1/4 inch between circles if you did every single one of them. Because on the frame system we have this 1/4 and 3/4 inch spacing, because we have 2 different sides, if I were to use the side that has this 1 1/4 and 1 3/4, 2 1/4, 3 3/4, etc., that's where you're getting that 1/8 differential in spacing. So what I'll do right now is, we know that we just did this at 5, so I'm going to go ahead and put it at 5 1/4 on that side that has all of these small numbers, the 1/4 inch numbers. I'm going to put it at this 5 1/4. So I'm going to line up the pin right on that. And then we'll just make one circle just to show you that 1/8 increment that you have the potential to do. So one thing that you can see when you're doing that is my foot is the 1/2 inch foot, just like any ruler foot that we'd be using. Because we are only going 1/8 inch, as we get around a little bit further, you'll see that the foot is actually over the line of the circle right here. So if this is the edge of the circle, the foot is actually on that side of that line. And that's going to give us a little bit of a narrower echo on there, and that could be just something fun for you to play with. So I'll come on the back here just to keep my fingers out of the way, letting the ruler guide me. I do have my finger pressing the stop button whenever I sorry, there's something about this microphone that gets kind of a really sharp feedback that's really, really loud, and it scares me. All right, so let's just go ahead and get ourselves right around to this top piece of this circle, and I'm going to look right in there, connect my circle nice. And the key about making that circle really pretty is making sure you're not pulling on your fabric. Another tip that I'm going to offer for my long armers is making sure that when we're doing this, we're going to not use, make sure you use your bungee clips. I'm just going to put that on there to make sure that my pin doesn't fall down. And I'm going to snip my threads real quick. So I do have a couple of these connector threads, so I would go back. I would have to get underneath the quilt and also cut those. So, you know, if that bothered you, you could certainly go ahead and just clip all of them while you're in process. You know, you could do each circle and you would go ahead and cut those threads. But this allows you this 1/8 inch increment, which is a really small, you know, space. So you can do a lot of different patterning with that, which is pretty fun. So This is just the concentric circles, and you're just using the same pin, and I could do as many as I want all the way up to 12 inches. So I can do concentric circles in 1/8 inch increments from 2 to 12. Actually, I guess 1 inch to 12. So it's quite a few different choices that you have when you're using this one when you're on a frame. So I've set it up to kind of do a little border treatment and just show you some ways that you can use this. A lot of people ask me often, how do I turn the corner? So this is specifically designed to be a corner design, and maybe it wouldn't meet in the middle. There might be some adjustments that you would have to make to meet in the middle. So maybe your center would not be exactly you'd have to fudge that a little bit at the center, but we're going to make our corner look really pretty. So let's adjust our camera just a little bit, and then we'll take some questions before we start the new design.
So Anne asked, is this template just for Longarm, or is it available for domestic machines? She hasn't seen it before.
Yeah, so as we're comparing, these tools right here are the same function. They allow you to do concentric circles. But this template cannot work on a frame long arm very easily because we have to move the foot in the channel. We cannot actually move the quilt, which is how this one is sewn. Here we would put the foot in the channel, and we are pushing the entire quilt along this line, and then the pivot here at the pin holds this the same distance from the center. We cannot do that on a framed long arm because the quilt does not move. So this is the circles on quilt option for frame users. You definitely would have to have the ruler base. It's still pin driven. You are still pivoting around the pin, and then where the foot is, it's in this little channel right here, but where the pivot is from the pin, that's changing the spacing from the center. So this is designed for frame users only. This is not something you're going to be using on your sit down. This is for people with a framed long arm that is on a carriage. Any other questions, honey? All right, so let's go ahead and we'll move over. I could take this pin out if I want to, or I could leave it in there if I was going to add some more designs later. Let me scoot the camera, so we'll move to our next design space, and we'll kind of come out a little bit too so you can see more of it. All right, so we just moved just a little bit. This space is a 6-inch border. So 6 inches from this side to this side. This is then a 6-inch corner, and this is 6-inch wide right here. So what I'm going to do initially is just use this corner pin right here. So let's come down a tiny bit so you can see how I'm lining it up. And I'm going to put the ruler right on there, and I'm going to sew some quarter circles right in this space. So the border here is the stop position as I sew that. And just for reference, I've made some little notes down here. I've got a 12-inch circle, an 11-inch, 10, 9, and 8. And I'm going to just put them in here in this way and fill up as much as I can. Okay, so let's go ahead and we'll move our machine down to that spot. I'm going to have to set my needle in position, but I don't know where yet. I need to go ahead and first put the template on and then put my foot in the channel. So I'm just going to hold that pin, make sure he doesn't fall out while I get set up. Now, let's put this at the very bottom, and I'm going to talk about why I chose this size and this position right here. We know that on this 6-inch square, this diagonal is actually longer than this straight leg, right? This distance right here is 6, but the diagonal is more, almost a half more, like it's 0.414. So what I did when I decided what I was going to do is I put this on here, and I wanted to see how far that this design could fit up in this diagonal. So if this is the diagonal right here, this is where the tallest circle will be. So it's going to fill up a lot of this space, not all of it, and that's okay, we don't want that, but you could choose how deep your circle is. Just by changing the pinhole, you can move it this way, move it that way, and it's going to take up a different amount of distance. But right now, I've got it on the 12 number 12 right here, and that means that this distance where the foot will sew is that 6-inch spacing. So right at the beginning, I can go ahead and hook it right on the edge, just like this. We'll get our machine in place, and there is a line right there that I can line up on my boundary. So here, let's put this in here. Okay, and once I get it all set, I'll kind of make sure my needle is right in my boundary, and I'll pick up that bobbin thread. I usually do that and then get my needle seated, then I know where it needs to be. If I need super accuracy, I can fudge that and play with it and get my needle exactly where I want it. So here, I'm just going to come down and do the quarter circle, and then we're going to travel in and fill in underneath it. Okay? You can go either direction. The reason that we're doing it this way is I wanted to show you why I chose that 12-inch spacing so that you could see my thought process. So right here, we'll just come into the bottom. And as I said, he should basically fill the square right at that 6-inch right there at the bottom. And here, if I just move this out of the way, I can just use my straight edge to travel. Okay? So right here, let's kind of scoot down a little bit. You can see just that I'm getting adjusted. I need to scoot in a little bit, and when I change 1 inch of a circle, so if I go from 12 to 11, it's a 1/2 inch difference in space. So what I'm looking to do is scoot over enough that I can put the next circle on there. Well, that's not a big distance that I need to travel. It's only a little bit, so about right there. The needle was here, and now I've got this 1/4 inch, and the needle is right in the middle of the foot there. So that's all the space that I needed to get onto the next number. But I've got to pick this up, and I've got to change to my 11 position, and I'll just pin that back on. And when you're doing that, make sure that your ruler base is under there, because if it isn't, you're going to have to hold that pin so he doesn't fall out. And let's see how we did. Did we do a good estimate? We're right in our channel, and let's go back the other way. So this is where the directionality is already fixed for you. When we do it this way, that's just the most practical direction. So it doesn't really matter how comfortable we are this way. This would be so much easier than trying to come back, reset our needle here, and then try to go all with the directions that we're comfortable. You're just going to go what is the most practical, continuous way right here. So then just like I did on that side, I just scoot that out of the way, and I just need to come down a short distance so I can position for the next one.
So Sandy's asking, why can't you move your ruler first, then know how far you gotta move it?
So Sandy, if you have your foot in the channel, I'll actually explain it after we do this one. You're saying change the position first?
I think that's what she means.
Aha. So real quick, I'm going to hold my pin because I can tell he's wiggly. So I'm going to hold him. I'm reaching under the quilt and getting this lined right up on that 10. Right there. And I'll put that on. So right there, as we sew down, if we tried to put the foot in the channel, see how this plastic is going to impede that? We really can't do that. I mean, even if we put the ruler in place, we could maybe put it out there, but see how far it is? It's almost flanged because it's on the arc.
Focus on the cold part, not your arms.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay, so I think it's much harder to do that, and I like that I have the straight edge is going to bring me down. A lot of us have that 1/4 inch calibrated eyeball, and when we're doing 1 inch difference in circle, all I need to be able to see is a 1/4 inch between where my foot was before, where my needle was, and where the new position is. So right at the back here, there's about a 1/4 of an inch, and then I can just put that in there. And I can tell you right now, this is kind of pulling a little bit. He's actually, I think, not quite in the proper spot. So let's make sure we are before we move. I could tell when I pulled this forward, it kind of pushed this up a little bit. Once it settles, then you can check your alignment here and make sure that the foot isn't pulling the sandwich or buckling this area a little bit. Make sure this is nice and flat. And then let's do the next one. and I'll come right into my border right there if that was my ditch, my seam right here, and then I can just travel again. And all these little waves right here, that's what's allowing you to really hold on and kind of have some tactile information so that you can rotate that template really conveniently. This is like giving you a little gripping power here. Okay, so let's just scoot over a little bit more. As we said, we just need that 1/4 inch, so I'm not going to go very far. Change my pin. We are at 10, so let's go to 9. We are going to go ahead and put a few of these in. That'll let you see how it works, and most importantly, that's going to allow the design to form. So, okay, so let's go ahead and go back the other way. Okay, and then same thing, let's just scoot down just a little bit. About right there, and we'll make that adjustment. So this is the edge right here of my table. So I'm going to hold that pin, make sure that I have some stability as I try to adjust the position. And then also just make sure that I'm on the right number. So this is a great place to use those arrow stickers that we have, because you could just mark the little spaces that you want to use, especially if you're trying to repeat that for any reason. So let's go ahead and we'll just put this last one in. This is 8. So these are just even numbers. We're just evens and odds. We went 12, 11, 10, 9, 8. So let's talk for a second about what we can fit on here. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines, right? So when I'm doing that, those 5 lines, the reason I filled that in a little bit, there's a pretty good size space right here that we can put something in right here. So that just would allow you to put some designs, something in there if you wanted to. What we're going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and move my pin to another location. I could potentially, use multiple pins as long as I'm not sewing in there. The reason I like the little white eraser or something bright, making sure that you're not forgetting that that pin is there. So like if you're using some fabric, you could even just put a little piece of red fabric on the pin. Something that says, hey, the pin is here, don't just keep sewing or whatever, especially if the ruler isn't on there. Obviously we can see the ruler, but over there, if this white wasn't there, we might not be able to really see that pin really well. So that would be an important thing for you to keep in your mind. So I've marked this off. This space from the pin here to here is that 6 inches. And I've marked this area off at 2 inches just, visually for myself. I'm going to come over from this 6 inch from the corner to this 2 inch space, and we're going to start another one of these, and we're going to talk about what choices we have when we set that up. All right, so let's get our pin because we're going to need it. Pull him out. Actually, I think I'll get the other one because he's under the table right now. Let's pull this one out. All right, and so one of the trickiest parts, I think, is maybe getting the pin in when the table is there. So if that's a problem, you can just sew this way, that way, whatever. I think we'll just scoot over a little bit because we need a little room. So I'm just sewing right in my ditch right there just to give me some flexibility so I can align the pin right in this position right here. So it can be a little tricky. Sometimes if you can get underneath there, you may be able to see things a little better. But all right, so he's right in his spot. Let's go ahead and put him in. Now, yeah, give me just 1 second to put this on, and then I'll get the camera re-centered so we can see really well. So for reference, right now, I'm going to go ahead and put this on the 8-inch circle, and I want to show you why I'm choosing that as we go. So right in this area, this is going to touch somewhere over here, right? And I also know Did I do it upside down? There we go, this way. I guess I'll turn it this way. Right here, it's going to hit right where this circle touches right there. So I don't need any information except to just get back to there, and then I'll be in the right spot. Because you can see this comes right in between. It's right in the middle of that channel where this circle right there is touching that line. Okay, so that's the 2 inches that I am going to scoot back over. So I would just sew right back until I hit that spot. Okay, and then we'll scoot that out of the way. Now, let me show you one other thing before I start sewing. This amount of space is going to be a certain height in this 6-inch space. So let me just turn the ruler around, see if we can, tricky. Where it's going to end up, I'll just use this as a visual marker, about from there to there. So if I put the end right there, this is how tall it's going to be. So this is the boundary right here, and it's going to hit just within that boundary. It's not going to fill it all the way to the top. It's going to have a little space. Well, guess what? We have a little space right here too. This circle doesn't fill all the way to the corner. So what we're trying to do when I decided to move over those 2-inch spaces is to keep that same amount of visual space. And now we're going to just start another set of circles. So let me scoot some of these things out of our way too. Always have a nice clean workspace. Okay, and I think our focus is pretty good. Let's see if we can come in just a little bit more maybe, so you can see a little better. So this is that 2 inches away from the squared off corner, and then wherever the circle is hitting, that's where it hits. Now I've made mine able to touch this space pretty precisely, but sometimes it won't. It depends on what your spacing is as you go across, and if you either force it or if you just say, okay, they're all 6 inches apart, let them hit where they want. Your precision quotient is what's going to determine that, and the way that you can figure it out is draw it out on paper with your stitching line discs and see where is it going to hit. What we're doing is we're going to create a really cute little crosshatch where these come together right here. So let's go ahead and we'll finish up this one, and we'll add some other ones. So as we said, this was the 8-inch circle. So what we're going to get in terms of the spacing is that this, let's see, get that camera over here, right there. This is from the pin to this edge is 4 inches, right? Just like we said, it's 4 inches tall. So that's something you can use always to just plan your design. So again, we need to come in a little bit. So we'll just use our straight edge. And let's see, we might be able to come back just a little bit so we can get a wider angle view. Okay. All right, so right here, let's just come back a little bit, and we'll put that 1 inch smaller circle. So all we need is the 1/4 inch right there. And we're just going to change the numbers. We're going to go from 8 to 7. Put your pin on, make sure that he's not moving around, and then we should be right in that channel. So pretty easy to follow. I'm going to adjust my hand so I have better control there. All right, and let's see where we're at. Stopping right in our line, and then same thing, we're just going to scoot over. Just get this little guy out of the way so you can easily adjust. And we just want 1/4 inch between where we ended and where we started. So 6, put our pin keeper back on, and here we go. So with this, if I even use 2 hands, I can kind of control the machine by just keeping it right in that channel, and I'm keeping the edge of the ruler compressed down against that ruler base so that it's not bumping up and down. We don't want any flux like that. Okay, so let's finish. We'll do just one more. We're going to scoot that out of the way and we'll move down to 5. Now, let's mention for a minute, this is going to have 4 circles on this side. The one that we're doing right now is only 4. The one on the corner has 5. Does that matter? No, you can decide. The reason that I chose to put another one in is on the corner, there's a lot bigger space. There's more empty space and I wanted to fill it in. So we're actually going to put a design in there and I'll show you that as soon as we finish this part of our design here. So let's scoot over so we can get to our next circle. We're just giving that 1/4 inch and maybe one more stitch to make sure we're correctly spaced. So from the circle that I just ended, I scooted over to the left just so that I have a 1/4 inch of space between the stitch line and the edge of the foot. Okay, and now we're on position number 5. I fit right into the channel and I can just go back the other way. It's nice and smooth. Make sure you're holding that ruler if you need to adjust your hand position so you feel more comfortable. Let's talk about one more thing. You might notice that I do not have any stable tape grips on this right now. So let's go ahead and we'll just take this off. I'm going to take this pin out because I actually want to scoot over here, so we can scoot over. And we're going to do the same thing. We're just going to give ourselves a little bit of space. So this measurement right here, this is from that 6-inch square was 2 inches. So from the end of the design right here, I'm just going to scoot over 2 inches so that these will intersect. Because remember that this is 4 inches. So if I just move over 2 inches, then these will cross over within that 2-inch spacing. Okay? So let me pull that pin out and we'll just do just a couple of lines just to show you that. We got to get that pin out of there. Okay, so we'll just scoot over to our next set of 2-inch markings and we'll align right there. And we said 8, so we'll put it back on 8 because it's the same size that we'll be using. And then I'll just scoot that out of the way. So as we're getting ready, we're looking to be right here. So one of the things we can do just to estimate where that space is so that I know, I'll just make a little dot right there and then I'll just sew down there with my straight edge. So if you have your spacing gauge, this is a perfect time to use that. And you're going to see this right on the corner might look a little different than these, right? Because the spacing on here isn't exactly the same, but it'll be the same on both corners. And it allows this part of the design right here to be really centered right in that center position. Well, let's see if we can sew a little bit and then we'll show you. Here, I'll scoot over. So this is at 8, and we're going to start that crosshatch right there. And we'll probably just do 1 right here just so you can see what that will look like. Now that we've got the machine out of the way, I'm going to kind of hone in right here on this area so you can get a little tighter view of it right there. So that's what we're creating. And there's 2 features about this design that is really unique. Now you have an embellishment space right here. This one is a little bit bigger than this, but both of them have the potential to have a center design right here at the pin, right? So for example, like a Spinifex or something like that. It's based on the height that you have available, and I have a suggestion there, so we'll do that, but let's go ahead and just put a little bit more of this in. If I was going to go in this direction, it's the same thing. If this is the squared off line right here where the end of the design is, then I'm measuring 2 inches up and the pin will be seated at that position 2 inches away from this edge. And then it'll cross over right here on this side. And so you'll get a little swag right here and here. And the swag that we're going to do now is going to just be a little different spacing, but very, very similar. But because it's not on that 90-degree angle, we don't care. We're just going to do what we want to do. right? We're not trying to make it exactly the same. We're just trying to make it relatively the same. Yeah, let's come out a little bit too. All right. So this is the pin right here. So this is where we just finished stitching like that. So I'm just moving this out of the way. And I'm just going to scoot in a little bit with my straight edge so that I have that 1/4 inch space. And then we'll be shifting. So one thing that I'll mention, you guys know that I usually don't mind shifting templates. I'm often doing that. And with this one, obviously we have to, right? We're not going to get a different diameter circle if we don't change the pin pivot. So that's something important for you to know, that you would always need to do that with this template as you go. So right now I wasn't quite in the right spot, so I took 1 or 2 stitches to get centered in the channel, and now we'll put that 7" in there. So I'm going to adjust my hand position so that I have a little bit better. And let's go ahead and also move our camera a little too. This way you can see a little bit more of the whole thing. Okay, here we go. Now, maybe I will touch perfectly at the bottom, right at the end of the circle. Maybe I won't. That is a little too much precision for me because everything is moving. There's vibration here. This has got some trampolining right here, you know, because the fabric moves with the vibration. So if I'm not perfectly right touching exactly at the bottom of the other one, I don't care. And I'll show you that at the end. I'll show you an example of, you know, the lines cross over a little bit. I'm just going to be comfortable letting them land where they land. The spacing is going to be the same throughout the border, and you're going to have some areas where it touches perfectly, some where it doesn't. If that really bothers you, you may be able to do a little bit of force fitting, but I think it's okay to just allow it to land where it lands. It's still going to look great. Okay, so we're at 7, so let's adjust and get onto 6 right here. Put our little pin keeper on there, and again, we'll just scoot over. About right there, and we'll do that next one. So this is a great way to show you both directions and how you can easily manage that. I always want to keep that pressure right around the foot. I really feel like that is an important safety element, and you always want to manage that. Okay, so scoot this out of the way, and we'll scoot over, do our 1/4 inch. So again, right here on this side of the foot from the stitch line, there is a 1/4 inch to the edge of the foot right there. And that's the 1/2 inch that we need in order to space these arcs. Okay, and I'm right in the channel, and we'll do this last one. Change my hand position. All right, so let's go ahead and we'll pull this out. I'm going to take my pin out as well. Let's tack it. Once we move the ruler, I think it'll be easier to get that pin out, because our ruler base was in our way. Okay, and then we'll just cut that thread, and I can get this pin out of there. All right, so do you guys kind of see the idea and how you could vary up that spacing as well? You can do whatever spacing you want. And I can change the height here. The reason that I created this gap right here is because we're going to put potentially something else in there. So this allows us to do some piano keys on this inner spacing and have some ideas for how we can put another fill in there. So that's why I left that gap, but we don't have to have a gap. We could actually add more circles in there and fill this up more if we wanted to. Okay, so let's see where we're at. All right, let's talk about putting in the little center embellishes real quick. And to do that, I'm going to remove this center pin because I don't want him in my way when I'm sewing. So I'm just going to grab him, take him out, and I always want to put that little protector. These pins are really, really big. They're long and they're sharp. So I like to have a little protective cover on them or put them on my eraser. So this spacing right here, okay, is a certain amount of height. So let's go ahead and grab some templates and we're just going to showcase a couple of ideas. So this particular one is the Spinifex number 8, and that's from the Fun and Fancy collection. So let's show you what it looks like right there. This is going to sew out at 5.5 inches, and that means that if I sewed both sides, if I sewed one in this way and one below it as a line, that's the 5.5. So this particular leaf shape is actually going to be half of that, which is 2 3/4. So I can actually just put this on here, centered right on the line. There's a little dot with the pinhole, and what I can see right away is that this is going to sew up into my circles right here, which I don't like. So I need something smaller. Let's go ahead and make some crosshair marks, and we'll sew this little smaller one, which I have, the 3.5. So that's going to fit really nicely into that space without crowding anybody. He's going to fit beautifully and not cross over into my circle detail. All right, there's a little better angle for you. On these, there is a line right at the bottom. This is that needle position reference line. Let's put this underneath it so you can see it a little better. Right, see that white line right there? Right there, this white line, the foot will sit in there and the needle will align right on that line, and it's on both sides, so I can do either direction. I can do this design any way I want. I can start here and move out, or I can start there and this would be the top. So we'll put it in like this just for reference, and let's go ahead and we'll make some markings with our crosshair. So today I'm using the 5-point crosshair. Can you see there's 5 of them, and I'm going to kind of put this little Y like that. So he's in the center position, and then he's like a little Y right there. So I'm just going to line him up and we'll make those marks. Okay, and then I'm just going to put one more set of lines. So get lined up, put a line in the middle. I'm trying to make sure if I got them in the middle. Where are they? Oh, maybe not. There we go. So that one, I might be in trouble. I have too many lines. Don't let me use that one. Okay, so this one is a no-no, right? So we've got some nice space. We're not trying to make this too crowded. We can use any Spinifex. We can use whatever reference we want. We can use the 8-point, but what I don't want to do is make this too crowded. So I'm trying to create a little bit more space by having a bigger space for my crosshair. So let's pull our template. With this one, I want to showcase real quickly. We do have our tape. I can go ahead and open this up and get the foot inside there. Many people have a spring-loaded hopping foot, and I have a lot of people say, oh, I can't get my ruler in there. Well, with my foot, I can lift up on this foot and I can put that inside the channel. Now, I will tell you that that is not easy to do. It's hard. There's a lot of pressure that is pushing down on this foot. So when I pull up, I really have to pull up pretty good. So baby lock long arms are like that. Handy quilter long arms are like that. The Janome long arm is like that. I think some of the larger faff might be like that. Not everyone is. So you'll want to check your machine and give it that tug and see if you can lift up, because most long arms don't have a presser foot lifter. They only have that spring loaded action, and that's what's creating that hopping action. Okay, so let's get started. We want to get our thread picked up, and let's put our needle right in the center position. Another benefit to this right now too, besides filling in that space and adding more detail, it's going to put a little bit more thread right where that pinhole was, and that has an added function of kind of camouflaging that area. So let's get these threads out of here. get those out of our way. And then we'll just put these lines in. If anything is going to cross over outside the boundary of my border, I don't want that, right? So just know that as I sew around, once the needle touches this bottom line right there, I'm not just going to keep sewing. I'm just going to come back the other direction and get my needle seated right in the center. So just like we do with our spinifex, I'm lined up right on the crosshair line, and then I'll just keep going. I'll line it up on the next one, and I'm just going to fill these details in. So when I'm using a long arm and I'm following the inside edge of the template, I want to have 3 positions of contact, right? I'm holding the ruler, that's one, right? The foot has to be in contact with the ruler. So if this is where the ruler is, I'm just holding it steady, but I'm pulling the ruler, the machine, so that the foot stays in contact. That's number 2. And then the other thing is I need pressure on and off the ruler always so that I can feel what is happening, that if the ruler is shifting a little bit or not. So don't always put your hand up here on the ruler. Make sure that you have some pressure on the sandwich, on the ruler deck, the table underneath. That way you can kind of get a sense of if there's any untoward movement happening while you're sewing. Right, so we've done 2, so let's just keep going. We'll line up the next one. And these are pretty easy. I can actually sew almost all of these. We'll do the other one in a different direction to show you how we might have to adjust that hand position. So right here, as we come towards me, I'm going to be shifting my hand, and it might be uncomfortable. So what can happen different times with rulers, if I can't get the correct pressure, just stop, and then I might adjust my hand position. Oh, did somebody just tell Honey that I messed up? I sewed the one. No, Honey pays attention. He's like, you just sewed the one you didn't want to sew. The one that I marked off. Okay, it's okay. Bonbon time, right? So let's go ahead. We'll just finish these up, and then we'll move on, and we'll do that corner. The reason I chose 2 different spinifex sizes is I want to be able to fill the space that is available. So like right here, this space is a certain amount, but then on the corner where the other one is, the space is bigger. So I want to make sure that I'm using something that will still give that same degree of fill. So let's finish this last one, and then we'll go over to the corner. This one is going to be doubled up right here. So I'm going to sew until I touch my boundary, just looking inside the foot, and then I'll just sew backwards. I want to go ahead and restart where we were. We just left off. We finished this detail right here, and I'm going to go ahead and just shift us over to the other space. Right now I'm going to go ahead and just take this out. I'm going to lift up my foot. That lets me get this thread, and then I can just scoot everybody over right here, and I'll center my needle down and up, and I'm just going to trim that so that I can disconnect from my bobbin thread real quick. So right now the design that we put in here is the spinifex number 8, and you can see this is just a fun little sunburst. We can put any different size, we can put any number of them in there. I could go back in and add another one there, but I think that gets a little too busy. Let's kind of come in a little tighter so you could see more of it up close. Okay, so you can see this was the one that I wasn't supposed to sew, that Honey was like, hey, don't sew that, but I had already sewed it. But I think this is a nice scale. This allows a little space in here so we're not crowding it, and when we do our crossover, he fits, right? We don't want to cross over so much that when we touch this guy, it looks like we made a mistake. So this is a little bit of breathing room right here for all of this area, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to shift over to the corner, and I'm going to show you that we're going to use a different size and a different scale, but we're going to put the same design in. So here we're just going to walk our camera, so just come with me real quick. This is the corner of our design, so let's pan out a little bit so you can kind of see where we're at in terms of the whole piece, right? This is the corner element, and this is the 8-inch half circle, and this is the crossover. Right here we'll go ahead and we'll mark with our spinifex, and since we have a bigger spinifex and we kind of want to keep the same relationship, let's do that same crosshair number 5 point, and we'll use the same relationship, and we'll put some marks in there. We're going to be using this diagonal as the alignment mark, right? So that our center one is right in the middle of that quarter circle. So let me get my pen. So we'll line this up just as we said, right along the diagonal, right here. And let me just mark that in a little bit more so I can have a better visual as we go. Right there, I'll just mark that in so I have that diagonal. Right there. Okay, and then just like we said before, we're going to line up this center right along that center line with the hole as the pin pivot. Okay, so that's the first one. So then I'm going to turn it. Let's see, right there. And then we want to put one line in the middle of each of those. Right there. Right in the middle there. And then right in the middle on this one. So I've got the white line and I've got the slot right there. I need to actually pivot back just a little bit so that my slot is in the middle of those right there. Okay, so you could see the spacing's nice and even. The ones that are here on the edge, let's get in a little tighter. I think it's harder to see when we're too far out. Okay, so the one that we aligned right here is definitely going to stop right here on the edge, but this, using the same Spinifex shape, it's going to create some unity between this corner and this. But the spacing right here is quite a bit bigger since we're using that diagonal. That's why we're going to be using a bigger size. That's going to fill it up a little bit more appropriately, and that's also why we added one more of this arc on the inside to fill up this space, because the diagonal is larger. All right, so let's see if we can get our camera in a little better. Right there. Okay, so that's the space that we're going to be trying to work with right there. Let's see, he does not want to. Can you guys see that okay? Let Honey know if it looks good or.
Needs just to focus.
Yeah. All right, so let's see if we.
Because the Longarm handle is in the way. It's focusing on.
There we go. That's better. Okay. All right. So these are the two sizes that we have. You can see that this was the 3.5, number 8, and this one's the 5.5 right here. So here's where you can see it's really powerful to have different sizes of the Spinifex, so that sometimes when your space is a little smaller, you have an optional size, but you can still keep that unity of design. So here we would be lining this up, and the spacing here, you can see that this is a little bit bigger than 1 inch from the edge right here of this template. Whereas if we put this little guy right here, you know, it's not even 1 inch, it's a little bit smaller. So this is where you could play with some different sizes, but this is what I have, so we'll be using this one today. It looks like that it's possible I could even fit the 7.5 into that space and still have it fit nicely. But let's go ahead and we'll just stitch that out. Again, we'll shift our long arm over. You'll see that the ruler base kind of moves, right? Can you see that? Like as it falls off. That's because that ruler base is elevating that and letting everything be flat. All right, so let's get our foot inside. And we're going to start right down at the corner. Is that a little too close for you? No, it looks okay. All right, so we'll adjust the camera if we need to, but let's go ahead and pick up our bobbin thread and get our needle into position. All right, I'm going to put my needle down and get these threads out of my way, and then let's go ahead and start. Let's start in the opposite direction so you can see if, you know, depending on if you're right or left-handed. Here I'm going to have to go that way, so I'm going to have to manage the ruler on this side. And I'm lining it up on the first line, not this straight line, but the first line of the 5-point crosshair. Okay? So as I'm going, I don't want to go too fast. I don't want to bounce the ruler foot right here into that edge right there. What happens if you do that is I feel like that makes it so that the whole thing vibrates, and then you don't get a pretty stitch as you come into the corner. So as we're doing that, let's go ahead and just slowly connect the dots right on the border, and then we'll come back and sew into the corner. That double stitching right on those two edges allows us to get back to the center without a lot of messy overstitching because the ruler's already in place. So let's do the next one and we'll just keep going. So this one also will not fill that space. He will not let us get back to the center. So this one will have to be double stitched as well. So the needle's touching, and then gently we'll just come back and we'll sew back until we get down to where we started. Okay, so if you feel more comfortable moving slowly, some long arms are heavier than others. Some of them are lightweight, they just fly around. You're going to get to know the swing of your machine and how comfortable it is for you to move. And then you'll be more comfortable using that ruler because you'll know how much pressure that you need to put on there. So each time I'm making sure that I have pressure on and off the ruler, and that wherever the foot is, I'm going to make sure I have good pressure, enough pressure that it's not going to shift around. This is about as far away from where the foot is as I usually ever want to hold. So if it's much more than that, which is about maybe 2.5 inches, shift your hand so that you have pressure where the foot is. So this one is right on the edge, and we'll do that last one. I'm going to double stitch this one too. That way all of them will look the same because we have 2 on each end here that are double stitched, so this way we can make sure it stays the same. We're right on the edge right here, and we'll just come into that border boundary right there and come back. Alright, so let's go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and continue stitching for a minute. So I'm just going to take this off. Just like we do with any of our rulers, we can go ahead and take that off, take that tape out of there, and just put the tape back on. Alright, so let's scoot up. I'm going to actually stitch right up the edge there and out of the way so you guys can see the design. When we're working with our long arm, we can put our ruler essentially on any side, wherever your visibility is most convenient. Like for me, I think this would be kind of hard. I wouldn't have as sturdy of a position unless I was closer. The camera is actually where I would want to be standing. So I think on this side, I'm actually going to just set it up like this, and I'll sew right back up along the stitch line that I've already got. And I'm checking my position as I go, making sure that I can sew right in the line. When I get up to the top, this 2-finger rule, I want to shift the ruler up. Don't just keep sewing right off of the edge. It's important that you make sure you have enough room, right? We don't want to sew right off the edge of the ruler. We want to make sure that then we shift it down so we have enough room to sew. Okay. So let's see what we got. What do you think? Did you like the design so far? If this was too open right here, one of the easiest ways to fix that is just put another circle right in there. That's what I would do. Make it all even. Do we have any questions so far? All right, so let's talk about one potential idea that we can do and what choices that we might want to make right here. So this is the straight line that's going to come right into this, and this is a straight line as well. So one of the things that might be really easy to fill in this space is somebody had been asking me about doing piano keys, and this is a little different in that we're not on the outer edge right here. We're not on the outside of the boundary where we could just sew off the edge. We're inside the boundary here. So what I thought I would do is just create a pattern with our straight edge ruler. We'll just sew right across, right here, right to the corner, and we need to do something to manage this corner. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to sew right down from the corner. It's going to create a little space, but remember we still have the crossover on that side. So, oh darn it, I shouldn't have done that side. You're going to stop right at the circle, right? We don't have our circles in there yet. But I would come down to my circle, and I'm going to sew right back up to the boundary. Okay, so right there, and as I travel, I'm going to travel across this line now. And the first one I want to do, I think I'm actually just going to push it with my ruler just a little bit like that. Notice how I didn't actually control it. I just pushed the ruler to move over just a little bit, right in that same straight line. So the first one we'll do a 1/2 of an inch. And then I'm just going to sew back up and get in the line. And if I'm going further than just that tiny little bit of space, I can do that. I want to now create a different spacing. So we have a 1/4 inch, and now we'll do, let's see, maybe 1 inch for the next one. So I've got it aligned right on that third line. There's 3 lines right here on this ruler right there, and I'm lining up on this line. So that's going to give me a 1 inch spacing. So we're going to have a 1/4 inch spacing and then 1 inch in this border area. So I'll just line them up, touch the circle, and come back. Now let's talk about one thing. I can tell maybe this is not perfectly squared up. If this is my seam right here, you can use one of these lines on the ruler right there to align on the seam, and that'll help keep your lines straight as you go. So here's our 1/4 inch. So this white line, I can tell that I was a little bit off. I wasn't quite squared up. So I'm going to make the correction right now with my 1/4 inch, touch the circle and back up. And when I move over this time, now I'm going to get the next one to be aligned just the same with this line right here so that they all are parallel this way. Okay? All right, so let's get aligned and we'll scoot over. So I'm going to try to go right in my existing stitch line, and I'm estimating how far I need to come over to line up. And if the ruler foot isn't touching, then I'll just get aligned first, get the ruler in position, and then I'm going to scoot backwards. So touch, and then we'll just come back up. Do I change my ruler position each time? Yeah, I do. This one, the foot just needs to touch so we can get our 1/4 inch right there. So I'm going to use that straight edge on the top to keep me squared up. And then we'll just put that 1/4 inch echo. The number one thing that I find with this one that I have trouble with is if you create a pattern, it's pretty easy to forget that you're doing a pattern. So let's just come in a little tighter so you can see the workspace a little bit more. We'll get you guys closer. Okay, so this way I think you'll be able to see a little bit better how I'm lining things up and moving right there. So right here, this is that 1/4 inch, so I've got to come across the line, and you can pretty easily and quickly do that just moving over. You can even count the number of stitches and then just align this, and if you're just 1 or 2 stitches off, just use the ruler, push you over until you're aligned on the correct reference, and then there you go. So touching, try not to go below the circle, try to stop right on the circle. Better to be 1 stitch short of it than cut into this design down on the bottom. If there's a little gap there, nobody will notice, but if you're in the circle area, they'll definitely notice. So let's scoot over just that little bit. We can just push with the ruler until we're aligned, and then make sure you use one of these other reference lines up at the top, right? Again, we're trying to get this very much squared up to that border seam. So touching and back up. So what we can do here is we just create this entire pattern, but then what happens right here at the corner? So what my thought was is we would have to put the other arc in. We need this type of space on this side as well, but from this line I would just continue the pattern all the way until I can't put any more in against this straight line that we've sewn. And then when I start this one, I would start with this line and I'd fill this way as many as I could, So you're going to get a little cross braid here in the corner, and then these will all be straight, and then these will all go the other direction. So let me draw it in a little bit just to show you what I mean. I'm going to put, let's see if we can maybe put the little crossover circle. Okay. So let me just kind of put a faux circle in here because we kind of need the top arc here to show where we're going to be. So if this was the boundary line, oh, okay, let's see what we can do. Right there. All right, let's just take this out real quick since we're done with our design. All right, so I'm going to show you what I'm thinking of right here. I would just keep going. So I'm going to use my stitching line discs and I'm just going to draw this in to show you what it would look like from this side, but then it would be identical from this side as well. Can you grab them? They're in the little drawer, babe. Just grab a handful of them. Thank you, thank you. All right, love my little stitching line discs, right? They're awesome. Make sure you pick the one that fits your writing implement, whatever you're using. So right here, I would just keep the same spacing, and I'm going to fill this design in all the way across on this straight line right here. So if this is the edge of the circle right there, that's where I would stop. So this is the 1 inch. Let's put our table under there. We need support. Okay, here we go. Oh, he doesn't fit. We need something bigger. There we go. There's your 1 inch, and then we would just continue with that same pattern. This one would be the 1/4 inch, and then we do a 1 inch all the way along until we hit the circle for the other crosshatch. Right? So we'll just continue filling this in like that. So the circle right here, this line will stop at the end of the circle. So we've got this straight line here, but it should not be there, right? This is where it would end, just like it ends right here. And we would just fill them in that way until we finished as many as we could. So basically it would look like that. And then what would happen on this side is the same thing. We would have the 1/4 inch on this side like this, and then we're just going to come back this way with that 1 inch spacing. Okay, so let's do it this way. It'll be like this. There's your 1 inch, and it's going to stop at the corner, and then there's that 1/4 inch, and then we'll just keep going, putting that 1 inch in, and then the 1/4 inch until this space is filled. And what that does is that creates a little intentional crossover right here in this square, and then these all would just go straight. So it's like a little plaid, but it ends right there at that boundary right there. So that would be just an option of how you can cross, because these all have to go this way to fill, and then these all have to go that way to fill to keep that space the same. So you're going to get a little crossover right here in this corner, but it should match, right? We've got, this is how it would look. It would look the same over there, despite my little crazy line. All right, so we've done the circles on quilts for frame. We've created that border idea with this cute cross hatching right here. We've showcased how you can use your spin effects to fill in and embellish some of the openings that you're creating within that. And then you can also go ahead and put a piano key or a plaid fill in there if you want to do that. You can also change this up. You can just do these at an angle like that and still have the 1/4 inch and then 1 inch and then a 1/4 inch. It's just that this space is very small, so you're not going to get a lot of value for some complicated design in there. Do we have any questions before we sign off, baby? All right, well, thank you guys so much for your patience and kind of...
Just Nancy, when you stop and continue to sew, does your bobbin thread come to the top? Especially when bunching stitches in the center like when using the Spinifex 8.
Okay, so Nancy, the question I would ask you is if you are on a domestic machine or are you on a long arm? So if you're on a long arm, it's very likely that your top tension is too much top tension. Usually what's happening then is that top thread is just yanking up on that bobbin. And that can be true on a domestic, but on a domestic it might be also more movement related. By putting a couple of extra stitches, what's important is if you're taking another stitch, try to move ever so slightly instead of being in exactly the same position. Even with my long arm, if I'm tacking, so we'll just pretend that we're in the stitch line right here and say we want to change directions or something like that. If I'm sewing right here and I just want to put a few extra stitches, or I'm sewing and I'm coming into a place where I need to stop, right there, if I'm going to put a few extra stitches in, I've got to move. Even if it's just a little tiny bit of movement, I've got to shift that machine tiny bit. Because if I don't, what happens then is the knots stack up on top of each other, and then the top knot is on top of the fabric, and that's what we see because they have nowhere to go. They can't be hidden inside anymore because there's already one right underneath there on the inside. If we move just even a tiny bit, very small amount, it's basically taking a very fine micro stitch, but then that knot still has a better potential to be hidden inside the batting. Another thing to think about is that the thinner that your batting is, the less space there is for the knot to hide. So if you are using something that is a really ultra thin batting, it's going to be often a lot more difficult to hide that knot. So if that's something that you're experiencing, you might consider not using a high loft batting, but like a difference between something that is, Pellon is thin, and I use Pellon. I think it's a great product, but it is very thin, many of them. Whereas if you use Quilter's Dream, they tend to be a little thicker. The body of that is a little loftier, so there's more space for that knot to be hidden. And the knot needs to be hidden even more when you're using two different colors where your bobbin and your top thread are a different color. So that would be something that might influence your batting choice when you're actually using two different colored threads instead of using a matching thread. Because if your thread's matching and it pulls up to the top, you might not even see it. So this was our Circles on Quilts for Frame. And again, you can absolutely do these designs with our Circles on Quilts for sit down, but you want to make sure you're using the right tool that is appropriate for your machine. So if you're going to get the Circles on Quilts and you want to have a lot of size flexibility, I recommend set number 3, because set number 3 is going to give you from 2 to 12 inches in 1/4 inch concentric circle increments, whereas the frame tool will give you from 1 to 12 in 1/8 inch increments. But these are different machines right here. This set for sit down and for domestic machine users, and this for frame long arm users. Okay? All right, if you have any questions, I always go back through the feed. I will be happy to check it out and answer anything that did not get answered. And have a great weekend. Take care, you guys.